Good afternoon, everybody. This is Tim Demoff, President of National Sales and Marketing Executives. We want to welcome everybody for being on board here today for the webinar. We got a very interesting webinar and a very great speaker here. A couple preliminary things. I do want to tell you that on May 12th, we will have another webinar, which is next month, May 12th. Tuesday, May 12th, and we've been sending information out there with that information. So feel free to sign up anytime you want for that. Also, want to say that with this webinar, we want to thank Lost Tribe Media, and we would like Chris Smith, President of Lost Tribe Media, to explain to everybody their services, because for sure, right now, you could use their services and they can be very helpful to you and to your company and to individuals. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris Smith, President of Lost Tribe Media, to tell us all about their company. Chris?
Thanks, Tim. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to thank Tim and Akron Canton NSME for bringing us in to host a series of virtual meetings while we're all staying at home. Again, I'm Chris Smith, President of Lost Tribe Media, and running things on the technical side today is Cooper Comstock from Focal Point. Just a quick introduction as to who we are. Lost Tribe Media and Focal Point are two established media and communication service providers in our region. And in January of this year, the two organizations came together as a full-service marketing agency providing marketing, branding, PR, video, web, audiovisual, and events management and production. The company offers everything that you need in one place. The world we find ourselves living in has created a lot of challenges for any number of businesses and organizations, especially in the Midwest, where businesses haven't been very quick to adopt remote technology solutions traditionally. So that's why many local businesses are exploring virtual solutions today. And navigating these solutions can be a bit daunting, especially when so many of you already have a full plate of work responsibilities, trying to work around this situation. And that's why Lost Tribe Media and Focal Point are actively being sought out, and why the Ohio Society of Association Executives put us on their COVID emergency response team to assist their members in planning conferences, conventions, and virtual meetings of all kinds. Our team has been working with a number of clients, not only develop virtual communication plan for them, but also set up and manage the technology that allows meetings and presentations such as this to take place. And it can include everything from board meetings and trade shows to registration-based multi-day, multi-session conferences. And streaming live events is something that our team has actually been doing for years, but now it has rapidly become the norm. So we can help you reach out to any of the people you want to meet with or talk to. So let me know if I can be of any assistance. My email address is chris.smith@losttribemedia.com. Chris is C-H-R-I-S. Or you can just go to losttribemedia.com. Click on our team page. My email address is there. And you can also click on the contact page and I'll get that contact there. So if we can be of any assistance, please let me know. And Tim, I'm going to turn this back over to you, and I look forward to the presentation today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks to both Chris Smith and Lost Tribe Media for the sponsorship and for putting us all together and coordinating this behind the scenes. I do want to tell everybody, please mute your mic. You go down to the left-hand corner of your screen. There's a picture of a microphone, and there's a video picture. Please hit the mute hit the microphone, and it'll put a red line through it, and that'll mute your microphone and keep all that background noise. So make sure bottom left-hand corner of your screen, click on the microphone, and it should put a red line through it. Also, at the bottom of your screen is a orange square, and it has the word chat on it, C-H-A-T, chat. This is for questions. And if any time during the course you have a question, click on chat and type in your question, and then hit the return key. The return key then sends it for us to see. We will be addressing some questions for sure at the end, and we will get to as many questions as we can. Diane has left time at the end for questions. We might address one or two during it, but for sure at the end, use the chat button for that. So we will also have everybody done right on time by 1 o'clock, so you can be assured of that. Okay, let's just talk a little bit about Diane Helbig, our presenter today. I've known Diane a long time, and I can just start out by saying she is one dynamic person with a lot of information, and she can give some really serious, good, solid guidance to different individuals and businesses. She is an international business and leadership change agent, and she really calls herself a growth accelerator lady, and she does a very good job with that. And she specializes in leadership change. She's an author. She has 2 books already, and she's got a new one coming out called Succeed Without Selling. Okay, you can pre-order it. You can't buy it, but you can pre-order Succeed Without Selling. And she's going to launch the ebook version on May 26th. If you're interested, contact her. She also is a speaker, a podcast host, and it goes on. She really focuses with businesses and organizations to operate more constructively and more profitably. So without further ado, I'm just going to turn it over to Diane, and welcome, Diane.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everybody, for doing this. I know we're all getting used to doing things virtually. So I'm going to, I have a lot to say on the subject of growing your business without selling. And as Tim said, please type questions into the chat room. They'll be monitoring them. We'll definitely have time at the end, and we may sprinkle some through the process. So that is the first thing. The second thing is I'm going to ask you to suspend any notions you have about selling, just at least as long as we are communicating with each other here today, hopefully longer, but I'm at least going to ask you to be open-minded about this. And lastly, I'm going to apologize in the event my dog barks. There's not a whole lot I can do about that. It's one of the challenges of doing things this way. So let's jump in. Just to give you a rough idea of the agenda, I'm going to share some hard truths with you guys. We're going to go over something I call I do. Then I'm going to talk about some best practices and the importance of monitoring. And then we'll open it up for questions. So here are some hard truths. And I call them hard truths because, you look at this and you go, whoa, wait, what? But indeed they are. This is my tough love section, and you'll hear it more probably throughout this. The first one is you can't sell. And what I mean by that is that you can't sell anything to anybody. We have to get over this idea that if we're convincing enough or eloquent enough, whatever, that we're going to convince somebody they need what we offer. People will buy from you. There's no doubt about it, as long as they trust you and that you are, you've built the relationship with them, and they either trust you or they trust the person who is referring you to them. So that's the first one. The second one is, I am not sorry to tell you that no one cares about your product or service when they meet you. They don't care about it in the sales meeting. They don't care about it at all until they trust you. And then the only thing they care about is the thing that they need. So we, as salespeople, have a bad habit of thinking we have to tell people at networking events, in emails, in a sales conversation, everything we offer. I think I know why we do that. I think we're afraid if we leave something out, we're going to miss an opportunity. And I'm going to tell you right now, that is just not the case, because the truth is, they don't listen to that. They don't hear it. And so the more you're talking, the less they're listening. They only care about the thing that they are dealing with at the time, and they only care about you and what you offer once they trust you. And that trust comes from them knowing that you are more interested in helping them solve a problem than you are in getting paid. Which leads me to my third hard truth, which is focus matters. And what I mean by that is this. The more you focus on selling, the less you will sell. And I'm going to say it again because it is critically important. And if you don't remember anything else we talk about in this conversation, please remember this one. The more you focus on selling, the less you will sell. And it's because when you are focused on selling, you are focused on you. And no one cares about you. See hard truth number 2. They don't care that you have a mortgage to pay. They don't care that you have employees you have to pay. They don't care that your kid needs braces. They don't care. When you are out of sales mode, out of sales brain, and into curious brain and discovery, then you are totally present. You are really focused on the other person, and that is what is attractive to the people who you are engaging with. Okay? So this is why at the beginning I asked you to sort of, suspend your belief system, because we are taught an awful lot of behaviors that don't work. And we know they don't work, but we keep doing them thinking we're the ones who are wrong. Well, you're only wrong if you keep doing it because you've been told the wrong thing. Let me put it that way. So when you're feeling uncomfortable walking into a networking event and telling people all about your product or service and putting your business card in everyone's face, keep feeling uncomfortable about that to the point where you don't do it anymore because it doesn't work. Okay? Okay, good. So now we're going to jump to I do. And it really stands for ideal client, discovery, and open-minded. And the reason I picked I do is because the process of sales is like dating. You don't get married on your first date unless maybe you're in Vegas. But we're not. We're in Ohio. What we do is we date. We get to know the person. So if it's an easy thing for you to remember, the I do, right on, because this is how we make sure that we are doing the things we need to do to go through the relationship building process. Okay? So, ideal client. It is critically important that we identify what an ideal client looks like. And so I'm going to ask you to think about your best clients or customers and ask yourself, what is it about them that puts them at that very top? You know how we say that, the 20% of your clients are the best. What is it about them? It's going to revolve around things like how much they value what you do, whether they beat you up on price, if they're forthcoming with information, if they're a partner with you, so they give you what you need in order to be able to help them, they pay on time. Maybe it's has to do with what it is you're selling to them, if it's your favorite thing to sell or it's got the biggest margins. How much revenue you're realizing from them, how much profit you're realizing on that revenue, how many locations, how big they are, whatever. And everybody's different, but there are certain characteristics that really make up your ideal client. And the reason why it is so important, there's a couple of reasons. One is because it tells you who to prospect toward. The second thing is it tells you who to stay away from. And one of the things about sales that I think a lot of us miss is you are interviewing them just as much as they are interviewing you. And you get to decide whether the person or the company that you are talking to is someone you want to do business with. And this is a tricky thing about sales because people instantly say, you are suggesting that I walk away from revenue. And you're right, I am. because not all revenue is good. So I want you to walk through a little exercise. Think about your ideal clients. It could be current, could be past. Create that list of characteristics of them. The second step is to think about clients you hated. And if you currently have any of them who you hate, you don't want to answer the phone when they call, you don't want to answer their emails, they take up all your time, they drive you crazy, they're never happy, they nitpick, they probably beat you up on price, so you're probably not even getting good margins. You could potentially be losing money every single time you have to do something for them. Okay? And this is how we have them segmented out. I'm a winner is your ideal client. She's fabulous. You love her, you adore her. Mr. Me Too is good, and you'll take him. He's just not as great as I'm a winner. So I'm not suggesting that you're only going to do business with ideal clients, but I am suggesting that knowing very clearly what an ideal client looks like and what a horrible client looks like keeps you in the top two and keeps you away from he's a deadbeat. Because he's a deadbeat, we don't want to have anything to do with. Okay? So remember that. And remember, when you are going through this process, you are gauging them in the same way that they are gauging you. Which leads me to discovery. When you're in that sales conversation, first of all, when you're prospecting, you are prospecting for a meeting, not for a sale. Because as I said in the previous slide, you don't know whether you want to do business with this person until you've had a conversation with them, or this company till you've had a conversation with them. So what you really want is the meeting. What you really want is the discovery. So ask yourself, what do you need to know about them to answer two questions? The first one is, can I help them? Do I have something that can help them solve a problem, whatever problem they're having? And the second question is, do I want to? Right? You get to decide. Well, now let's take a step back and say, how am I going to know the answer to those two questions? By asking a ton of questions. So there are questions around the value that you bring, the thing that you do, the problem that they might have. That's going to be different for all of you, depending on what industry you're in. And those questions are probably pretty easy for you to list out. Then there are questions about them. And I've got a couple of them here. Like one of them is, how do they decision make? So we all want to know if we're talking to the decision maker, but we don't want to ask if they're the decision maker because it's rude. And they don't like it when we ask that question. And they're going to tell us they're the decision maker, whether they are or not, because it's rude. But if we say, would you mind sharing with me how you decision make, or how you're going to go through, how you are going to go through the process of making a decision here? That's a really milder question, and they're going to tell you, and then you have to be listening for what they're telling you, because then you'll know what their process is, which can help you ask other questions that follow that. Asking them if they've ever used a service or a product like yours in the past is also really valuable information, because if they did, why did they stop? What was their experience like? If they're currently using it, why are they talking to you? Something must be wrong, or they wouldn't be entertaining a conversation with you. And you know what? If nothing's wrong and they're having a conversation with you, they're doing it for a whole other reason. They're doing it because they have to get 3 quotes. They're doing it because someone told them to have a conversation with you. And here's another hard truth. That's a waste of time. It's a waste of yours, and it's a waste of theirs. But you're not going to know it if you don't ask these questions. Okay? So think about other questions. You need to know about budget, but they don't want to tell you. So you can start with a question like, have you considered a budget for this? If they've used a service like yours before, you can ask them, would you mind sharing with me what your investment was? If they're currently using one, you can ask them, would you mind sharing with me what your current spend is? They know. So whether they think they have a budget or not, they have a floor and they have a ceiling, And you need to know that. But how you ask those questions is going to help you get those answers. So there is a whole world of questions you could be asking to get a feel for who they are. If they are not forthcoming with information, they don't want to work with you. So that's one of those little bells that should be going off in your head, that they aren't necessarily a good prospect, no matter how big they are, no matter how deep their pockets, no matter anything. Okay? So take some time and think about what those questions are that you need answers to in order for you to be evaluating them properly. And you got to do it with an open mind. You got to know what you're really hearing from them. So this is why I say when we enter with just discovery as our goal, not a sale, we're out of sales brain, we're in curious brain, we are open to really hearing what they're saying and how they're saying it, and also what they're not saying, so that we can really be in the moment and really know, can I really help them? Is there an opportunity here or not? And do I want to help them? A lot of times we sit and we listen, but we don't really listen. And then we go and we tell them what we want to tell them because we want the business. It doesn't work. People don't like it. They see through it. I can't tell you how many times I've been with clients and I sat in on a vendor, having a conversation with them, and then we waited for the proposal. And when we got the proposal, it was boilerplate and it didn't say anything about what the client had said. And the client knew it off the bat. The client sent it to me and said, they do it all the time. They'll send it to me and go, okay, did they listen to anything I said? Well, that is worse than not having the conversation at all. It really hurts your reputation. So then there's now what? Okay, so let's say the answer to both questions is yes. Yes, I can help them, and yes, I want to. Great. Schedule a next conversation so that you can bring them a proposal where you can have a conversation about it, okay? And while you're in this conversation, you can say, based on what I heard you say, I believe we can help you. Here's what I'm thinking. How about if we schedule a follow-up? Let me take this back and really work through it and create a proposal specifically for you, and let's sit down and go over it. You don't want to leave any sales conversation without a next step, without a next scheduled event. Because otherwise you're doing that. We had a great meeting. I think it went really well, and then you can't get them on the phone. If you can't or don't want to help them, then you thank them for their time and say, I don't believe we're the right resource for you. I do thank you for your time. I wish you well, and end it. You're putting it on you. It doesn't matter, but you got to get out of there. Okay. And when you have conviction about it, it's easy to do. It works really well. Now, you may have noticed how I was asking those questions. I was saying, would you mind? Would you share? It's all permission-based. I'm giving them permission to say no. And if they say, yeah, I mind, I really don't want to share that with you, then I can say, okay, would you help me understand why? What, it appears I've touched something, a soft spot, because here's why I'm asking the question. So it's an exchange. It's not just I ask a question, you answer it. I ask a question, you answer it. It's a conversation. It's an exchange, and you have to be totally open-minded and present for it. Okay, here are some best practices that I believe are best practices. The first one is you have to be willing to walk away. And I touched on it a minute ago when I said, yes, I am asking you to walk away from revenue because it's bad revenue, because it is not going to be good for your business long term. It may solve a problem in the short term because you've got money, but you don't necessarily have profit. And all the time that those bad ones take away from you being able to service your good clients and go get more good clients is actually, in the long run, hurting your business. The second best practice is respond to what you are hearing, not what you want to sell them. They don't care. Remember at the beginning? They don't care. They only care about the situation they're in and what they told you. You will have an opportunity later when you continue nurturing, which is the third best practice, when you continue nurturing the relationship, you will have an opportunity to learn about other things they need that you can help them with. But I am here to tell you, if you tell them all of that in the first conversation or as a follow-up to the first conversation, they're not even going to hear it. They're not going to remember it. It's a waste of time. The more you talk, the less they listen. And the fourth one is have processes. So it's really easy to get ramped up and going and be doing really well. And then you're having all sorts of meetings and creating all sorts of proposals and whatever. And then all of a sudden you stop prospecting. That's not good, because when all this stuff either closes or doesn't close and does whatever it does, you have nothing in the pipeline. You have nothing coming through. Having processes for prospecting, having a list of the questions you're going to ask during a sales conversation, having a follow-up process. How are you going to follow up with people when you're networking? How are you going to follow up with people you meet online? How are you going to follow up after a sales conversation? How are you going to follow up after the first transaction with a new client, a new customer? When you have processes for all these things, then it's easier to do them because you take those processes and you put them on a calendar. And then it's just a thing that you do in your world. And lastly, monitoring. So it is also critically important that we monitor our progress when we're selling so we know where we're at least over a 30-day period. So I have this monitoring process that I really like, which is 34 next. And here's how it goes. Every 30 days, you schedule on your calendar to do a review of the previous 30 days. And you ask yourself 4 questions. The first one is, what worked? So, you want to look at what things was I doing that I got a good result. The second question is, what didn't work? So what things am I doing that aren't getting me the result that I want? The third question is, did I hit my goal? And your goal could be anything. Your goal could be a number of meetings, a number of people you've connected with online, proposals that you've written. Those goals are probably going to be different every 30 days, but they can be different given the point you are in your sales process. So, did I hit my goal? If you didn't, okay, what didn't work is going to give you an idea of why. If you did, or you excelled, you overachieved, that's great. You're going to know why, because you're looking at what worked. And the last question is, what am I going to do for the next 30 days? Okay, so that's the next. Just for the next 30 days. Which things am I going to keep? Which things am I going to adapt or get rid of as far as activities go? What's my goal? You got to have all of that for the next 30 days. The reason why I like a 30-day plan is this. A lot of us business owners have a tendency to go, 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 go. We're doing. We do no monitoring. We get into like the end of the third quarter, early fourth quarter, and we look back and we say, oh, I have no idea where the year went. I have no idea what happened. And in the situation that we're in right now, we really need to be monitoring because things are shifting, things are changing. They're going to change back, but maybe not 100%. So we really need to be monitoring, what are we doing that's working? What are we doing that isn't working? And what are we going to do for the next 30 days to continue to implement processes and strategies to deal with our current world? And then we're going to do that. And then we're going to evaluate and keep moving forward. It's much easier to fix things when you know the reason why. I submit to you, if you wait until the end of the year or end of a quarter, you're not going to remember what happened. So you're not going to know what worked and what didn't work in order to be able to make those changes. And that is my belief system around how to grow your business without selling. Notice, I didn't say anything about persuading, convincing, cajoling, doing trial closes, any of that typical sales speak. And that's because it doesn't work. So that when I say grow your business without selling, that's what I mean. Stop all this old sales stuff that does not work. Let's start doing stuff that does work. Build trust, grow relationships, be paying attention to value. Tim, questions?
Yeah. You talk about, which is good. I think a lot of people don't think about what customers I shouldn't take on, what customers I should turn down, or what customers you have and down the road, they're not the most attractive person or company to work with. So I don't think there's much talk out there about negative clients. So let's switch gears a little bit. I'd like you to speak a little bit about negative clients.
Yeah.
How do you deal with negative clients? And what's the first couple things that you try to do, let's say, to salvage them? And then secondly, if they don't come through, how do you professionally or kindly fire a client? So it's two questions. How do
Yeah.
you maybe salvage it? What can you do, say, and do? And secondly, if it's useless or no hope, how do you disengage?
Okay, that's great. So the first thing is this. If even when you go through this whole process that I'm talking about and you really feel like everything is great, you could still end up with a bad client. Like someone, could, and some of us probably have bad clients. I don't, but some of you out there probably have bad clients right now. Having said that, it requires that you, first of all, that you sit down and have a conversation with them around making sure that you're both on the same page. So it's critically important that you know what success looks like to them. So what for them, how are they going to know this relationship is successful? How are they going to know that they are getting what they need and want in a way that is good for them? And ask the question. So that should actually be one of the discovery questions. So what does success look like? Okay. And have a deeper conversation around that so that you are clear. The second part of that, which is also really important, is repeat back what you think you're hearing from somebody. So, and let me say that words really matter. So what we should be doing is saying, okay, thank you. What I think I heard you say is the situation that you are having is this. What you would like to have is X, and what you're looking for in a vendor is A, B, and C. As opposed to saying what you said, because that makes people defensive too, and it's how you heard it. It's not necessarily, some people are just bad communicators. So it's important for you to summarize and confirm that you are actually hearing what they're telling you, and then put it in writing. So summarize the conversation. Say, thank you so much for the conversation. Based on what we were talking about, blah, 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 blah. This is what I believe. Because at least you have it then memorialized to be able to go back to. Now, if you do all of that and you think everything's great and then it's not, you got to sit down with your client and say, okay, I need your help here. Could you help me understand what's going on? The last conversation we had, you can do this with employees too. The last conversation we had, my understanding was that this is what you were expecting and looking for. It doesn't appear to be panning out that way because here's what I'm receiving. Here's what I'm hearing from you. So help me understand where we've missed the mark. And you got to be quiet and let them answer the question. Because, we don't like silence, which I get, but they have to man up. They have to stand up and say, this just isn't working out for me. And you know what? If they don't have a reason, if they can't come up with a good one, then you can say to them, okay, I can appreciate that. It appears this is not a good relationship. I think you need to find the vendor that makes the most sense for you. So let's talk about how we unwind this thing. Okay? You always keep it high level. If they try and give you all sorts of reasons and you're thinking to yourself, this is ridiculous and unreasonable, you don't say that. You say, thank you very much for the information. Based on our conversation, I'm thinking we're not the best resource for you. So let's talk about how we unwind this thing so you can find the vendor that'll work best. Helpful? You're on mute.
Very helpful.
Great.
Very helpful. And let me just add to that as an additional question. I've probably fired in 25 years, maybe 3 or 4 clients. And I use the word fired because they were just outrageous. But I actually had a client that was so rude to my people, and basically felt this power because they were a very large client to us. My response to that was that my employee and being rude to my employees is first, and secondly, I don't need anybody's money if it's going to be to that extent of someone being rude. So I actually, right there on the spot, it was a phone conversation, terminated that client, and I just flat out told him, and I didn't decorate it, I didn't swear at him, but I just said, look, you have been rude to my people.
Yeah.
I don't accept that. It's not
Yeah.
proper and professional.
Yeah.
I am firing you as a client. We no longer want to do business with you. So I'm looking for your reaction. Should I have even bitten my lip a little more, or do you think that scenario it was correct?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to you defending your employees, I think you did exactly the right thing. I think you keep it short, you keep it succinct, and you stand on a hill. I think we should always be standing on a hill when it comes to our employees. We should never let anybody treat them in a way that is less than respectful. So absolutely, cut it off. That's it. People should know that's not acceptable behavior. And if they don't, they can go treat someone else that way someplace else. But I think it is critically important for the success of your business for you to stand up for your employees in that way. So yeah, I have no problem with that being the way that you handle it.
We had another question from Jeffrey Schaefer. He's a business development and sales guy for Binary Defense, which is a very busy company right now with all the electronic hacking and ransomware and stuff, and they got a great company. But Jeff said, he sent over the line here. He said, have Diane talk about the simple formula of clarify and confirm. What does that mean to you in the sales realm?
Clarify and confirm. So I will say it means a couple of things. One is to make sure that you clarify what the prospect really needs, regardless of what you think they need. Clarify and confirm. And then confirm that that is true. So when I say you want to repeat back to them what you think you heard, I mean, like when you put a proposal together, put it in the summary. This is what, this is what we believe we heard based on that information, and then attach your solution specifically to those things so that it's very clear. This is what I heard. This is how we're going to solve that problem. It gets rid of objections because you're following their path. You've gotten all your questions answered. So you are providing them with an answer to all of those things: budget, timeline, decision-making, problem, like everything. So for me, that's what that means. I will say you can also use clarify and confirm when you're networking. I think you have to walk into networking situations believing that, or with the goal of just meeting people. Because if you walk in thinking you're looking for clients, you're going to miss out on some really great relationships and opportunities to connect with people because you're like a shark looking for dinner. And so, don't do it. Just be open-minded and realize my goal is to figure out how these people fit in my community, if they do at all, and then confirm it by then actually having conversations with them and building that relationship and making sure that that they really are fitting into that bucket.
Okay, got a couple more questions. Jim Horniak, his company is busy right now with all this, with the video conferencing that they do in the B2B. Jim Horniak asks, what marketing techniques do you recommend in the context of growing our business without selling?
Okay, great question, Jim. And I would say content delivery, being of value to people, is critically important. So we have to be top of mind. So market, there's a lot of ways that we can market. You can, depending on your business and your audience, you have to know where your audience is and where they're going to be receiving information. So if you were marketing to my mother-in-law, you would have to do it by direct mail, or you'd have to take an ad out in the paper because it's the only way you're going to reach her. Okay. If you are marketing to my daughter, you better be on Snapchat, TikTok, Twitter, my son, Twitter, because they're early teens. If you're marketing to me, probably LinkedIn if it's a business thing, probably Facebook if it's a individual thing. So we have to know where our audience is, and then we have to be providing value to them. So we can do the traditional marketing, that's fine. But right now, in this day and age, the more valuable we are to our prospect base, the more they're going to keep us around them and then turn to us when the time is right and when they need what we have to sell. Marketing is about exposure and credibility and awareness. Sales is about discovery. They're distinct. They're very different activities. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, it did. And thank you. We got a real good question here from Vince, which is kind of unique to the COVID-19. He says, Diane, what are your thoughts regarding prospecting during today's current COVID crisis?
Vince, it's such a great question. So here's what I think. I think when we look at prospecting as going on a discovery mission, I think we can absolutely be doing it right now. I think we have to be respectful of where people are and what they're going through. So when it comes to discovery, I think our first line of discovery should be, how are you? What's going on with you? You could reach out to any prospect and say, listen, I'm just reaching out in the community just to do a temperature check, just to see how people are doing, to find out what's going on with them, and to see if I have resources that I could be providing. So that's, I'm not selling anything. I'm just really wanting to be of value, be of help. Would you be open to a conversation so that I can, you can share with me what you need, how you're doing, how you're getting through all of this. Because remember, prospecting is like dating, right? It's relationship building. It takes time. It's a process. Right now is a great time to do it because people do have time and they're also going through something that you can have a meaningful conversation about.
Very good. Thank you. We have a question from Greg Fratz. Diane, what are your thoughts of using a T-letter format as a response letter after your meeting? Important points they made on the right side and your response, i.e. suggestions, on the left side.
Wow, that's interesting, Greg. I love the idea because it's interesting and original. I think as long as it's clear, and as so the downside would be, so I have an up and a downside. The downside, I think, would be that if it's too succinct, they may not feel like you really heard them. It may be hard to really capture what they were saying. The upside is people don't like to read. So if you're giving them a bulleted list and then you're matching across from it the solution, it's a great quick way for them to really be able to see how you are addressing everything that they've said. So I think the good outweighs the bad.
Well, I want to tell you, Vince appreciated your answer. Bob Doherty said he's been in sales over 40 years and he really thought you hit a lot of very key points, and
Thanks.
He wanted to commend you for that.
Thanks.
And Horniak says you've made a great point in regard to networking events. He says he looks at that as a shark looking for dinner.
Exactly.
So, all right, here's a little challenging question. If you have a customer who has low profitability but takes very little effort and brings very high value, would you keep them?
I would, but my question back would be, what is the high value they're bringing? That sounds to me like they're a big fish, so being able to say you do business with them actually gives you social proof and credibility in the marketplace. So it could be, my advice would be do the cost benefit analysis, because you may think they aren't taking a lot of effort, but if you added it all up, all of the costs involved in taking care of that client, you may find that you are losing money, in which case, no, it is not worth it.
So you would end up probably getting rid of them.
I would. I mean, before I got rid of them, I'd have a conversation with them about needing to change, you know, that it was time to increase the rate, you know, depending on what the business is. It was time to renegotiate the contract. And I would be prepared to walk away. I'd be prepared to say, okay, well, we're not going to be able to continue this relationship. Because let me tell you something. Yeah, they might be able to get it someplace else for the same price or cheaper, but not for very long. And I'll tell a quick story. When I used to sell remanufactured toner cartridges, I sold them to the county, and it's a bid process, low bid, that's it. And we won that bid every year, and we did a great job with them. And it was reasonable. We were making money. It was fine. Someone came in one year and so lowballed their bid, I mean, by like $20,000 for the year, that they got the bid. And in a month, they went back to the county and said, okay, how do we increase the price? And the county said, you don't. You have this contract for 2 years. This is the price. And they went out of business.
Wow.
So, no.
Yeah. Okay. I got a couple positives. Marcia Farrell said, this is a great lunchtime. I'm really enjoying it. Jeff Schaefer, very solid information. Great to hear from someone who shares his same thoughts process and professional outlook. Well done, Diane.
Thank you.
And Chris Kutzko stated that big fish, 30% of the business. So his question, that question revolves around, realistically, how much percentages of the businesses should be spread out? How should it be spread out? A lot of people, even though we know it, fall into the trap of 80%, 70% one customer, and the rest is a mixture. So why don't you speak on that a little bit? Chris thinks big fish, 30% of the business.
I think it depends on the business. And I think the question that you have to ask yourself is, if that customer went away, what would happen to my company? So 30%, okay, can you afford to lose 30% of your revenue? What happens to your business? Because remember, if you lose it, one of the questions is, what will it take to replace it? In effort, in money, in people? What am I going to do with those people while I'm looking? Listen, I had a client who came to me and said, we lost one of our biggest clients that was 30% of our business, and we have to lay people off or do something, and we don't know what to do. And I told them, go talk to your staff and tell them what happened and let them come up with the solution. And they did, so that they could weather the storm while they were building back up. But 30%, new customers that are worth 30% of your revenue don't come along every day. So you have to ask yourself the question, how am I going to replace that? And so that's going to determine that number, in my opinion, because they can go away as quickly as they came. And I'll tell another quick story. Debbie Fields from Mrs. Fields Cookies sold $5 million worth of cookies to the airline industry. And the next day, 9/11 happened, and we weren't flying anywhere. And so, it was a huge deal, one big, huge deal, gone. And they had to figure out how to maneuver. You got to ask yourself the question, how would we survive? How would we get by? How would we be able to replace that money? That will answer your own individual question about what percentage you can sustain with a big fish.
One last question for you, Diane.
Sure.
You gave a great presentation. We heard some
Thanks,
great
Tim.
questions. You gave some great follow-up answers. When you get unloaded with a presentation and amount, you're not going to walk away with everything you said. But what are the top 3 things that you want your audience today to remember? If they forget everything else, what are those top 3 things you want to share?
Okay, great. Thank you, Tim. And thank you, everybody, for participating in this. I really appreciate the questions. The first thing is this. The more you focus on selling, the less you will sell. That's the biggest, hugest, main thing. The second thing is approach everything from a position of curiosity. So always be curious, not always be closing. Always be curious, and you will do great because you will be interested in other people. And the third thing is really understand who your ideal client is so that you can stay away from he's a deadbeat. Those are my big 3.
Okay. Well, we want to thank you. We want to thank all the participants. We did not get to every single question. We had a couple more, but we want to respect the time. I
They can
think,
reach out to me and ask. I'm good with that.
Diane, why don't you give everybody your email or how to get a hold of you if they got additional questions? Go ahead.
Okay, great. So if you email me at Diane with one N at seizthisday.co, do not put an M on the end of that or I will never get it. It is .co. Just send me your questions. Just put that you were in this webinar. I'm happy to answer whatever questions you guys have.
And don't forget, she has her new book coming out, Succeed Without Selling, pre-order coming out right now. You can do a pre-order on Succeed Without Selling. Her ebook launch May 26th. So I also want to thank Chris Smith. And if you need to get a hold of Chris Smith to help you with what we did today and other ways to communicate, it's chris.smith@losttribemedia.com. And Chris, you got any closing remarks about what you're seeing out there?
No, I think one of the real key questions is how do you reach out to clients and new prospective contacts in this COVID-19 environment. And virtually right now is the top of the heat. So we're happy to help with that. And as somebody who does sales every day for the organization, everybody just keep swinging.
Well, we'll end on that. Everybody, thank you from National Sales Marketing Executives. Thanks to Sharon Reed for continuing to lead this great organization. We are going to see everybody again, a webinar on May 12th. We look forward to seeing you from there. We wish everybody the best. Everybody, have a great day. And don't forget, according to Diane, take the opportunity every day to seize this day. Have a great day. Thanks, Diane. Bye-bye.